All right, recording in progress. It's been a minute since I did this. All right. So I am here with Mr. Adam Fitzgerald. How are you doing, sir?
Good evening, Tommy. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure. I've been actually talking to some people because they've been giving me like huge compliments about the episodes that you and I did. And I've been like, yeah, I got to figure out another excuse to get Adam on. I just don't know where to go with the subject from now on. And then boom, this got laid in my lap. And I'm like, okay, well, let's do this because you're the guy to talk to about this stuff.
Oh, thank you.
And to be fair, I think both of us would agree that Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate are both fairly decent on the subject of 9/11. I just don't think they've quite dug in near as much as you have because their focus is more foreign policy than it is 9/11.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And I respect both of them. I follow both of them on Twitter, and I think they're excellent journalists actually in their own right.
Yeah, I found Max Blumenthal's book, The Management of Savagery, to be actually like really helpful in understanding the foreign policy of the Middle East and how the United States was acting in the Middle East. And yeah, I mean, you can look at this book. It's worn out, man. I wore this book out. Yeah, like reading through it, taking notes, and so I have no issue with Max Blumenthal. I mean, other than his economics, but we could talk about that some other time.
Yeah, if it's about numbers, don't involve me. I'm very bad at math.
But so what I wanted to do is I wanted to go through this video, and there are going to be some spots where we're going to stop. We'll add comments, and then after the video, I'm going to kind of let you lay out your entire argument where they kind of messed up. Yeah, I thought that was kind of the fairest way to go about it.
I think so. I think it's fair.
All right.
It is from the Greyzone. Here's the headline: Bombshell filing, 9/11 hijackers were CIA recruits. At least 2 9/11 hijackers had been recruited into a joint CIA-Saudi intelligence operation that was covered up at the highest level, according to an explosive new court filing. This is by the Greyzone's Kit Clarenberg. So, Max, talk to us about this story.
Yeah, let me pull this up because I want to refer to it. But this is an episode that I wrote about in the Management of Savagery. And we've now gained new insights and shocking new details. Actually, I wouldn't even say it's shocking. I would say our worst fears about this particular episode have been seemingly confirmed through a 2021 court filing, which was just released, which came in the form of a 21-page declaration by the lead investigator of the Office of Military Commissions, which is overseeing the cases of the 9/11 defendants. His name is Don Canestraro, and he had interviewed several FBI agents who were involved in investigating 9/11 and seeking actually to prevent the attack in the months leading up to the attack. So basically, this relates to 2 of the hijackers, the so-called muscle hijackers, who were charged with overwhelming one of them was a muscle hijacker, overwhelming the passengers and getting to the cockpit. The other one was a pilot, Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. These were Saudi citizens.
Did you stop it right there?
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, there's 2 things I want to talk right off the bat. One is the headline. They weren't recruits. They were trying to be recruits. So in other words, the CIA and the Saudi intelligence, the GID, right, the General Intelligence Directorate, knew about Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. And what they wanted to do was they knew they were coming inside the United States. And in 1999, the CIA drafted a plan to, and this was under Cofer Black, the director of the Counterterrorism Center, basically wanted to get informants within Al-Qaeda because there were none. So basically, somewhere within 99 or 2000, they got, they had Saudi intelligence basically conduct with them a legal operation inside the United States about collecting intelligence about Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi in the hopes of having the Saudis play a sympathizing role to Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. They didn't know what they were there for. So what they wanted to do is collect enough intelligence about what they were doing inside the United States in the hopes of revealing whatever operation they were undertaking to the Saudi agents, which would be related to the CIA as in default. But they never got that far because in 2000, Khalid al-Mihdhar left for Yemen to be with his wife, who was pregnant at the time, and that left Nawaf al-Hazmi behind. Now they moved to another place called Lemon Grove, San Diego, where they rented a room. Now before that, they were given an apartment by Omar al-Bayoumi, who's a suspected, now he's a confirmed Saudi government operative, who is funding, helping logistics, financing to both men. However, when Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi rented this room from another Arab at this mosque, I forgot the name of the mosque, they had no idea that that was an FBI informant that goes back to the 90s. And Khalid al-Mihdhar left for Yemen. And
I remember you and I talking about this.
Yes. And the guy whose name is Abdus Sheikh.
Yeah.
And Nawaf al-Hazmi told, no, this is important because Nawaf al-Hazmi told Abdus Sheikh that both Khalid and Nawaf never really trusted Omar al-Bayoumi because they suspected of being a Saudi spy. So in other words, they would have never revealed the plans to Omar al-Bayoumi because they've already had suspicions he was a Saudi spy. So they were never recruited. What the CIA and Saudis were trying to do was hopefully recruit them after they got wind of whatever operation, and they would work with them as informants. But they never got that far. So when Russia Today and Greyzone put out those headlines that the CIA were assets or recruits, it's just wrong. And the second point is that neither one of the men were pilots of Flight 77. Originally, they were supposed to be the pilots of Flight 77, but because they never spoke English, they were supposed to go to English classes, but they never went. So Hani Hanjour replaced them later as the alleged pilot of Flight 77. That's what I wanted to get off my chest.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Let me read to you these couple of pages where Max Blumenthal writes about what these guys were doing. And just see, this is from the Management of Savagery. It's the last paragraph of page 76, page 77, page 78, and the first two paragraphs of page 79. So it's not a whole lot, but it'll take a second. Early in 2000, an operation was set into motion to fulfill the American trap. An al-Qaeda operative named Khalid al-Mihdhar was deployed into the faceless suburbs of Southern California alongside his friend Nawaf al-Hazmi. Both men were sons of Saudi Arabia, products of its Wahhabi-influenced school system, and had followed the jihadi trail through Bosnia and Chechnya during the 1990s. Mihdhar later trained in Afghanistan, likely under the watch of Ali Mohammed. The two landed at Los Angeles International Airport on January 15th, 2000 on a flight from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Together, they represented part of the team that would execute what al-Qaeda informally referred to as the Plains Operation. While the two were in Malaysia, CIA operatives broke into Mihdhar's hotel room there and photographed his passport. Mihdhar was known to Saudi intelligence as a jihadist and was photographed by Malaysian secret police as a planning meeting for the Plains Operation. Also in attendance at the meeting was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, widely considered the mastermind behind the plot. The photos were immediately shared with the CIA. 2 months later, the agency learned that Mihdhar, now a known al-Qaeda member, had traveled to Los Angeles on a multiple entry visa, and that he was seated next to Hazmi on the flight. Curiously, the CIA refused to supply the information to the FBI. Why did the agency sit on its hands? Lawrence Wright, one of the leading chronicles of al-Qaeda's rise, speculated that Midar and Hazmi could have seemed like attractive recruitment possibilities. The CIA was desperate for a source inside Al Qaeda, having failed to penetrate the inner circle or even to place someone in the training camps, even though they were largely open to anyone who showed up. Neither Midar nor Hazmi spoke English or were familiar with American culture. When they arrived in Los Angeles, they were met at the airport by Omar Bayoumi, a Saudi Civil Aviation Authority official who did no known work for the Bureau. He was a ghost employee. Bayoumi had held a mysterious closed-door meeting at the Saudi consulate just moments before meeting the two men. Though he had never met Midar or Hazmi before, he was clearly acting as their advance man. Upon arrival, the two worshipped at the King Fahd Mosque in Los Angeles. I assume that's the mosque you were talking about?
No, it was a different one.
Okay. A Saudi-funded institution. There they met Fahad al-Tumari, an accredited Saudi consular official who served as the mosque imam. According to an FBI investigation carried out years later, they were immediately assigned an individual to take care of al-Hazami and Midar during their time in the Los Angeles area. That individual was almost certainly Bayoumi. In February, Bayoumi took Midar and Hazmi to San Diego, where they co-signed an apartment lease under his name. Neither man had any credit. Bayoumi was able to muster up large amounts of cash to cover his guests' expenses, far more than any ordinary government worker should have had access to. As soon as he took Midar and Hazmi in his charge, his salary shot up from $500 a month to $3,500 a month. One of the FBI's best sources in San Diego informed the Bureau that he thought that al-Bayoumi must be an intelligence officer for Saudi Arabia or another foreign power. A heavily redacted congressional investigative committee report later concluded Bayoumi and Tumari's phones registered 21 calls between them, spanning from Midar and Hazmi's arrival to May 2000. Bayoumi logged nearly 100 calls to Saudi officials in that period and traveled frequently to Saudi consular offices in Los Angeles and Washington during that time. At a welcoming party Bayoumi organized for Midar and Hazmi, he introduced them to Anwar al-Awlaki, one of the more notable Muslim religious figures in San Diego. On the day that Bayoumi helped Midar and Hazmi find a local apartment, he logged 4 calls to al-Awlaki. Al-Awlaki was a charismatic imam from Yemen whose flawless English and engaging style made him a star among many younger Muslims raised in the West. The cleric betrayed little signs of extremism, though he would later turn up in Yemen as top propagandist of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. At the time, Midar and Hazmi each considered him a kind of spiritual advisor, worshiping at his Al-Ribat al-Islami mosque. Is that the one?
I think that's it.
In La Mesa?
No, it should be at Lemon Grove.
Okay, well, this one is Al-Ribat al-Islami mosque is in La Mesa, and they met with him several times in private. It may never be... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's a different mosque. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It may never be known if al-Awlaki was aware that the two represented the advance team for a handful of operatives preparing a deadly operation. But neighbors of Midar and Hazmi suspected some sort of criminal plot was underway. There was always a series of cars driving up to the house late at night, said one neighbor. Sometimes they were nice cars, sometimes had darkened windows. They'd stay about 10 minutes. On March 5th, 2000, a cable arrived to the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, alerting the agency to Hazmi's presence in the United States. It read, "Action required, none." The FBI had eyes and ears on Midar and Hazmi almost as soon as they arrived in California. Indeed, a Bureau informant had extensive contacts with the two men, reporting back to his handler about them, but the Bureau did nothing. The FBI's inaction might have been understandable considering the CIA had inexplicably withheld evidence of Midar and Hazmi's presence at what the agency knew to be a gathering of top al-Qaeda operatives in Kuala Lumpur. It was not until August 2001 that Midar was placed on a terror watch list. By then, the Day of the Plains plot was in its final stages. So that's kind of the story that he writes about in The Management of Savagery. What I'm wondering is, did in these 21 pages that were recently released, was there just enough there to go ahead and give him the information he needed to continue down the path he was already on?
You're talking about Canestraro?
No, I'm talking about Max Blumenthal saying that these guys were CIA. So these recent 21 pages he's talking about being released, it already seems like when he's writing that, he's already tying them into CIA. The CIA decided there was no action to be taken, yada, yada, yada. Yet it is very well known that they had all these ties to al-Qaeda, but the CIA decided not to take action. And so he's coming up, like, by reading these 21 documents that have just been released, now he's saying, okay, these give me enough information for me to speculate or draw the conclusion that these guys were CIA operatives.
It would be a rush to judgment, because at no point were they ever confirmed to be working for the Saudi government. And if so, it doesn't say in the Canestraro files. It doesn't mention it in the Operation Encore FBI files. And like I said before, the Saudi operative that was certainly probably working on behalf of the CIA and Saudis basically was known to Khalid al-Midar and al-Hazmi as being a Saudi spy. So if al-Midar and al-Hazmi were going to share information about the planes operation, it wouldn't be with al-Bayoumi, that's for sure, because they've already had suspicions on him.
Okay.
Now,
when you read those files, though, do you think, if you already have like an inclination that these guys are CIA, would you be able to, like, because I want to give Max Blumenthal like the benefit of the doubt. I think he does good work. And so,
yeah, I just think
I'm just wondering if there's enough there that his former suspicions, he could make connections that maybe weren't quite there, but almost there.
No, because it's speculation.
Okay.
There is no definitive evidence to suggest that either al-Midar or al-Hazmi were working on behalf of the Saudis and by default working, and that intelligence reaches the CIA, unless the Saudis knew of al-Midar and al-Hazmi's plans before they even reached the United States and didn't share with the CIA. That could be true.
Okay. All right. So we'll continue the video.
Sure.
And Nawaf al-Hazmi, these were Saudi citizens who had attended a al-Qaeda, they called it like a mega summit. And it was a gathering of top al-Qaeda figures in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, back in January 2000. Now, during that summit, which again, it was a major al-Qaeda summit, during that summit, CIA agents broke into the hotel room of Al-Hazmi and Al-Midhar on January 5th and January 8th and photographed their passports. They were being monitored by the CIA. The CIA.
You can just tell me to stop. I'll stop.
Oh,
And
okay.
You can make
can-
any comments you want to make.
No, it's
Like,
good.
I don't mind.
I'm
You know,
sorry. No,
I
keep
have
going.
you on because you know way more about this than I do. So- Sorry, I had muted my microphone so people weren't listening to my
Oh,
lighter
okay.
every 3 seconds. Because I gotta light these cigarettes because I roll my own, they don't stay lit. If I put it down, it'll go out.
Oh, really? I didn't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, like old school cigarettes, not like this new BS paper crap they feed us. Old school cigarettes had like real oxygen in it, you know, it's like good for you. Yeah.
It was so good. You should be in the same sentence, Tommy.
Yeah, probably not. No, I know it's not good for me. I need to quit. I know I do. All right. Just let me know if you want me to pause it,
Okay,
though, man. I'll
yeah.
pause it and let you say whatever you want to say.
Knew they were there, and they knew that something was being planned, something like the Day of Plains attack, which was already within the kind of in the pipeline that was heavily monitored by US, Pakistani intelligence, all sorts of intelligence services. So Al-Hazmi and Al-Midhar were able to then, following this summit, from Malaysia, board a direct flight to LA International Airport,
No.
get off
no.
the flight without any screening.
Okay. Yeah, there's a little mistake here. I'm not blaming Max here. They actually flew to Bangkok first.
Okay.
And this is a little bit important because when they flew to Bangkok, they were traveling with a person by the name of Khalid. That's the person who called the house in Yemen and spoke with Khalid al-Midar and told him about this meeting in Malaysia. And his name is Tawfiq bin Attash. He's actually in Guantanamo. He's the alleged mastermind behind the USS Cole attack that the FBI was investigating. Just remember that name down the road. When they were in Bangkok, Tawfiq bin Attash then took a separate plane to Thailand, and Khalid al-Midar then and Nawaf Hazmi both then took a plane connecting to LAX.
Okay.
And then be met at the airport by Omar Bayumi, who was posing as an employee.
Sorry. Actually, he was met by a Tunisian cab driver, Khalid Benmarine. Khalid Benmarine was known to people. He was known at the King Fahd Mosque, that Fahad al-Thamari that you mentioned in the Max Blumenthal article. He's the head imam there. Now, according to Khalid Benmarine, he met with Fahad al-Thamari, but Fahad al-Thamari told him that he was to pick up two brothers, not brothers, but in terms of Muslims. But he never told him their names. So when he went to the hotel, when he went to the airport, he picked up these two men and he drove them to the King Fahd Mosque. It's alleged by the FBI from there, Fahad al-Thamari provided housing, temporary housing, to both men, in which Fahad al-Thamari had this hotel, and he basically rented these rooms out for them. Later on, the 9/11 Commission, under one of its lead investigators, Dieter Snell, basically said that the 9/11 Commission had no idea where they stood for the first 2 weeks. Well, the FBI did, because they interviewed Fahad al-Thamari, and he lied. Well, they found out was that these two men were provided temporary housing by Fahad al-Thamari, which would mean that Fahad al-Thamari, who's a suspected government spy as well, basically provided housing to two known al-Qaeda operatives. But at the same time, which was hidden from everybody, was that the CIA also was working on behalf of the Saudis, working together on a joint illegal operation in which nobody wanted to, like, they didn't want this to get out because the CIA would get in trouble. Later on, after the 9/11 attacks, the FBI interviewed Khalid Benmarine, and they provided 30 pictures, 19 of the hijackers. And he told them, all right, could you pick up the two pictures of the Saudis that you picked up? And he immediately picked out Khalid al-Midar and Nawaf Hazmi. And in doing so, he put the pictures back into the pile. the FBI immediately shut down the case, and it was ordered by none other than Director Robert Mueller. And Carly Better-Marie was actually deported back to Tunisia.
Hmm.
And we never heard about the case again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Of the Saudi Civil Aviation Authority, and was in fact a Saudi intelligence officer, who then took these two characters, Al-Qaeda figures, to an apartment, paid for their lease, and then arranged for them to receive rides in taxis to flight lessons while shepherding them to and from local Saudi-sponsored mosques. This should have set off alarm bells everywhere, but the CIA refused to tell the FBI that these figures were in the country. The CIA was operating through a shady unit known as Alex Station, which had been set up in tandem with the FBI, but which operated outside the FBI's purview and was essentially a black operation charged with the ability to recruit assets. And so not only did the CIA refuse to tell the FBI about these two would-be hijackers in the US, they forbade FBI agents assigned to Alex Station from telling other FBI agents. Why would they do that?
Yeah.
Why would they be so determined to avoid the detection of these two dangerous figures as they were being shepherded through the US by Saudi intelligence? Well, it's clear now, as was everyone suspected through Don Canestraro's filing, that they had been recruited by the CIA and were CIA assets, whether they knew it or not, and that Omar Bayoumi, the Saudi intelligence agent, was himself a CIA asset working in a US-Saudi joint intelligence operation. And this raises a lot of questions, which we'll get to, but here's the statement of an agent known simply as C3 in this filing. Said that Bayoumi's contact with the hijackers and his support thereafter was done at the behest of the CIA through the Saudi intelligence service. And the explicit purpose of Alex Station was to, quote, recruit al-Hazmi and al-Midhar via a liaison relationship. And so as Kit Clarenberg details in this excellent article, which really puts all of this into context, the FBI was not told about al-Midhar and al-Hazmi's presence in the US, or the fact that I think one of them was actually the roommate of the lead 9/11 hijacker, Mohammed Atta, at one point, which would have just wrapped up the whole operation until the operation was in its final stages and they had already gone to New York. Even at that point, it was not made a law enforcement investigation, which would have necessitated arrests. It was simply an intelligence investigation, which necessitated nothing more than surveillance. So you can just point a finger directly at Langley, at the CIA, and at Alex Station and say, you are responsible for letting 9/11 happen. That is the most conservative analysis we can put forward.
That's
we
tough.
Can also
That's
raise
tough.
certain questions about this.
I wouldn't. You know what? I wouldn't point the finger at CIA and say you let 9/11 happen, because that would mean that the CIA knew that the planes operation was going to happen before it happened, and there's no evidence to suggest that right now. Not to say that there might be. If there's anything, there's two agencies, domestic, we're talking, that would know specifics would be the NSA, because they were monitoring bin Laden's satellite phones in the mid-90s, and also the Al-Qaeda communications hub in Yemen where Khalid al-Midhar lived with the owner of the house, because he was married to the daughter of the house. I don't know what they said on those phones because it's not public, it's classified. So I wouldn't say the CIA knew about the plane's operation. Be too much.
But if you're drawing the conclusion as he is that these guys were CIA operatives and that Bayoumi was a CIA operative as well, then where else are you going to lay the blame? And see, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking he took a kernel of truth and he ran with it because it fit the narrative he had already laid out in his book.
He's not totally wrong. I think he's just in a rush to judgment to call them recruits, because that would mean, like I said, that would mean that the CIA knew beforehand the motivations of al-Mahdar and al-Hazmi, but they didn't, because, like I said, they already suspected al-Bayoumi as a spy. So where did they get this information from? I don't know who, because the file doesn't state that. So I wouldn't say they were recruits or informants. So they were hopefully trying to get them as recruits and informants, but it didn't work that far.
Right. All right. So you want to keep rolling?
Yeah, sure.
Max, this reminds me of another episode you read about in the Management of Savagery, which is the Manchester bombing in the UK, where the MI5 had basically worked with the bomber involved and not properly alerted authorities to his presence. And that failure set and staged the events that led that bombing to happen, like the bombing at the Ariana Grande concert. Is that a fair comparison?
This happens all the time. I mean, this happens all the time when assets are recruited and then they're protected by the intelligence services. We've seen it in bombings in Germany and France too, that they often had prior contact with the intelligence services and it gets swept under the rug. In the case of Salam Abedi, who was the Manchester bomber responsible for the worst terror attack I believe in British history, just ripping to shreds close to 20 young girls at a concert. He was trained with ISIS in Syria, and before that he worked with his father, Ramadan Abedi, who is an MI5 asset from Manchester, on the battlefield in Libya to overthrow Gaddafi. And the MI5 had been maintaining this community of Libyan expats, exiles in Manchester, as one of their anti-Gaddafi cards. And then once the dirty war in Libya began, the insurgency, they just turned them loose. They all got special visas to leave, exit visas to go to Libya. And when it was all over, Salam Abedi and his father were picked up by a British Royal Navy boat in Libya and taken home. I mean, it was that clearly a British operation. And so with those tactics and the ideology that he absorbed in Syria and Libya, he then went and targeted his own neighbors, his own countrymen. So we're going to have more on the Manchester bombing at the Greyzone, but back to this story. I mean, it was all covered up at the highest level for years and years, and we're only getting these details now. And then the personnel who oversaw this operation at Alex Station were promoted, including the FBI. The FBI person who was placed inside Alex Station, who did not tell other FBI personnel about al-Mahdar and al-Hazmi's presence inside the U.S., Dina Corsi. She's been promoted. I think she's like the deputy director of counterintelligence for the FBI, and she was actually in touch with Pete Strzok during the whole Operation Crossfire Hurricane episode, when this FBI unit was actually trying to stir up an investigation of Donald Trump over Russian collusion. So she's still there. Then you have, she's deputy assistant director for intelligence, if you look at her LinkedIn page. And then you have the successor of the first head of Alex Station. The first head was named Richard Blee. His successor was Alfreda Francis Bukowski, who joined the CIA's operations division and was a really influential figure in the war on terror, as Kit Clarenberg writes. And he actually oversaw the quote unquote enhanced interrogations or torture of 9/11 suspects, which influenced heavily the Senate Intelligence Committee's report. The Senate Intelligence Committee's report found that Bukowski was a key player in this torture program. And what was the point of the torture program? It was to extract confessions that would essentially back up the official narrative. Our understanding of 9/11 is heavily influenced by the confessions of suspects who were placed under heavy duress through torture overseen by Bukowski. So you understand the conflict of interest there, or the corruption there is that Bukowski is able to cover up what Alex Station did by fueling the entire narrative by presumably forcing suspects to say what he wanted. I mean, this is just insane levels of corruption that we're talking about. And so it raises questions. I mean, I think, this piece went viral and many people want to draw the most conspiratorial conclusion possible, which is that the CIA directed the 9/11 attacks in some form. Then there's the conclusion that could be drawn that the CIA allowed the 9/11 attacks to go forward in order to create space to advance the goals of the neocons and militaristic hardliners across the Middle East who needed what Paul Wolfowitz called months before 9/11 a catalyzing event. And then you could just simply draw the conclusion, the most conservative conclusion, which is that the CIA was so desperate to get sources inside Al-Qaeda and penetrate this organization that they were willing to overlook all of the warning signs that a massive attack was about to take place and prevent the FBI from knowing about it and then cover its own tracks. So one of those three conclusions, or all three, or some combination of them, is true.
And I wonder where this leaves the 9/11 families who have been trying to seek answers about Saudi Arabia's role in 9/11 for years. There was that release of those missing pages recently, but even those pages were still redacted. And I wonder if those redactions have to do with some of the disclosures that were made here in this court filing.
Yeah, I mean, they've been forgotten. The 9/11 families have been sort of forgotten. And under Obama, I think a law was passed to prevent them from suing the Saudi government. It was passed in the Senate. Yeah. So, yeah. And the whole 9/11 attack has been placed in the rearview mirror. I'm looking forward to the cover-up investigation of the creation of the next pandemic. I don't know when that's going to take place, but I mean, we're just so deluged in psyops that this has just been swept under the rug. But the point that I want to make and the conclusion I want to take away is that every step of the way from 9/11 through the entire history of Al-Qaeda, there has been the hand of the CIA directing it, influencing it, supporting it, training it, or just simply paving the pathway for Al-Qaeda to transform from this local organization that was fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan to a global organization. And so we're talking about from 1979, when Zbigniew Brzezinski laid the so-called bear trap for the Red Army in Afghanistan by working with the CIA to arm the Mujahideen, which allowed bin Laden to come in and start the Services Bureau in Peshawar and begin bringing the foreign fighters in, who then got their training and then moved abroad. From there to 9/11, which completely reshaped American politics in the worst way possible, to the Syrian dirty war, in which Al-Qaeda's rebranded new entity, I don't even know what it's called, the Salvation Front. It was called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, but it's really Al-Qaeda in Syria. They still control the northwestern province of Idlib. And that was a complete NATO operation. So that's the conclusion that I want to draw. That's what the management of savagery is about. And we're still getting the details to fill in these disturbing outlines.
So that was their entire presentation on that. I don't know. Where do you think we should go from there?
Okay, so basically, just about almost everything he said was right. And with the Canestraro files, like he said in the beginning, it confirmed our suspicions. Now, for years, you had reputable researchers in the last 20 years talking about how there must have been a nexus inside the United States that facilitated, provided support to these two Al-Qaeda operatives, Khalid al-Badr and Nawaf al-Hazmi, but we just didn't have it in writing. We didn't know, we just suspected it. Along came the Pent Bomb investigation, FBI investigation into Saudi financing. It was the largest investigation by the FBI undertaken in the agency's history. But it was incomplete. Now, in 2007, there was another FBI investigation about Saudi financing because some FBI agents were not fully satisfied with the Pent Bomb investigation. So one of them, Danny Gonzalez, FBI agent, led the charge of Operation Encore. This is a follow-up to the Pent Bomb investigation. And in 2007, there was more files being released and more information was at his disposal than there was 6 years prior, or 5 years prior. And he found out that there was a number of Saudi officials out west in California, San Diego, that provided funding for Khalid al-Badr, Nawaf al-Hazmi, and later Hani Anjour. And that ended, I think, in 2017, 2016, 2017, and basically brought about an investigation into a civil suit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, led by law firms like Motley Rice and Creedland Creedland. Dragged out in court. Obama disapproved it. Later, this was
even Trump disapproved.
Yes, even
there,
Trump.
There was a period where I remember a headline came out where Trump had told the FBI to shut down the lawsuits against Saudi Arabia. And that was like during the middle of his presidency. I want to say around 2018 or something like that. That came out.
Right. That's right. That, and also Bill Barr, actually, what was he, the Attorney General at the time? Basically also said that he wasn't going to release any information to the victims' families because it would hurt national security. So you could see the FBI covering up, probably on orders of the White House at this point. Not
or vice versa.
Yeah, either way. What they didn't want to do was hurt their interests, and that is to regulate the oil in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
However, along comes this guy, Donald Canestraro, Office of Military Commissions. And what he provides for us is basically all the suspicions that we gathered from Pent Bomb and Operation Encore. And basically, and it's all coming from not just documents and files, but from the testimonies of ex-FBI, ex-CIA, and former congressional officials of the 9/11 Commission and Joint House, saying almost on record, because they did say that they would only testify to Canestraro under conditions of anonymity, and basically said that, yes, the Saudi government, along with the CIA, were working in tandem inside the United States, making it an illegal operation, because by law, the CIA is not allowed to conduct operations inside the United States.
Except for MK Ultra and Operation Mockingbird.
Except for those programs, right?
Yeah.
However,
except for those.
Yeah, except see those to the side, right?
And killing JFK and wait, let's not get carried away.
Down the line, right?
They have boundaries,
right? But they weren't legally not allowed to operate inside the United States. On the same hand, working with an alleged ally in Saudi Arabia, who also is not, the State Department is not aware of. Here they are working in tandem to collect information about two known Al-Qaeda operatives who were meeting with, in Malaysia, a known mastermind of an attack on a U.S. warship, the USS Cole, which would make it an FBI jurisdiction case. But because they couldn't share this information, the FBI at Alex Station that Max Blumenthal talks about, the FBI had no idea that Khalid al-Badr and Nawaf al-Hazmi were living inside San Diego using their own names and opening up bank accounts, renting an apartment under their own names Nobody knew, but the CIA knew, Saudis knew, and the NSA certainly knew. And basically, this is what the document entails, is that it even goes further, that the information was kept from the FBI, that they were running this covert operation in the hopes of collecting intelligence about what they were doing inside the United States. And this was kept from both the White House, the State Department, and the FBI until August of 2001, when it was revealed in a principals meeting that, yes, they were inside the United States. But the CIA still wasn't clear, still didn't tell them everything. In other words, they didn't tell them that they were running a covert operation. No, because that would get them in trouble. And also at the same time, they still didn't tell them that they had U.S. visas. Because why? Because that would mean that the CIA withheld their visa information from the FBI, because that would mean that they would know that they were meeting with the mastermind of a cold bombing, in which it was an FBI investigation. So the FBI basically were running an intelligence investigation during that principals meeting. If they were told by the CIA that they met Khalid at a meeting in Malaysia, it would mean that was a criminal investigation, and then that would mean that they could arrest Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi and detain them about their involvement with the USS Cole. But because the CIA didn't tell them that, the FBI had to open up an intelligence investigation. And good luck finding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, because the CIA never told them where they were to begin with. Somewhere in the United States, like finding a needle in a haystack. So the CIA withheld information about two instances: U.S. visa, the meeting with Khalid, and the investigation into Cole.
And this is something you and I have talked about during these episodes when we're covering 9/11. Neither of us give the CIA credit for acting appropriately. You know, we're both like, what the hell were y'all doing? It's like, but I don't want people to come to the conclusion and jump to conclusions just because Max Blumenthal is putting out a story that sounds plausible, because what he's saying is plausible. He's missing some small facts, but based upon what you're reading out of the memo that he's basing his proof out of, what did you call it? The
Canestraro document.
Okay. So basing out of that, what are you reading that he's getting out of that? What is in that document?
Well, the document basically just states that former officials from the FBI and the CIA and Congress, basically, according to the information they have, which is classified information to the public, that the CIA basically and the Saudis were running a covert intelligence operation in the hopes of obtaining enough information from both Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi to reveal whatever they were doing inside the United States would be known to the CIA and the Saudis, in the hopes of using that against them, and then having them act as informants within the bigger circle of Al-Qaeda. Because up until this point, the CIA, like I said before, didn't have informants inside Al-Qaeda. Nobody did.
So do you think they were in contact with these people prior to the attacks on 9/11?
Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi?
Mm-hmm.
In contact with Al-Qaeda?
No, with the CIA. Do you think the CIA had contacted them?
No, there's no evidence, not directly. Now, they would use the Saudis to do that, because the Saudis, of course, you know, can speak the language, for one, and they don't look like white dressed up men in suits that CIA would offer, or just regular American gear. So they were using the Saudis.
I didn't know the CIA wore suits. I thought they all looked like Jason Bourne.
or Robert Redford. And,
right. Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, but one thing the CIA complained throughout the 90s was that they didn't have Arabic speakers. So they complained about this, but they were never given any Arab linguists. So basically,
how is that? That doesn't even seem plausible, because they were operating all over the world.
Yeah, right.
They were operating. We know they were operating in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, they
at
have a
the
base
at this
station in every
time.
city in the world.
Right. Well, I mean, well, we know about Alex Station. We know about all these things they were doing. I mean, there was that book. What was it called? Visas for Al Qaeda.
Oh, Al Qaeda. Yeah, visas for Al Qaeda.
You know, and they were down there in what is it, Jeddah? Is that what it
Yep.
was called? Jeddah?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So they were operating in these segments of the world.
Right.
How did they not speak the language? How could they not communicate with these people? That does not register to me. That does not like even make any sense to me.
Yeah. Well, the FBI also complained about not having enough Arab linguists in New York, of all places, and they're the lead agency when it comes to Arab fundamentalism. Only Ali Soufan spoke Arabic, fluent Arabic. So the CIA basically relied on the Saudis to basically give them. Now, at the same time, Tommy, they're having faith that the Saudis are sharing all the intelligence data with the CIA. For all we know, somewhere along the line, Fahd al-Tamari, Omar al-Bayoumi, maybe Osama Basnan, and of course the lead person who gave Fahd al-Tamari his position, who knew Omar al-Bayoumi, was Muassad al-Jarrah, whose name is redacted in the Operation Encore files until one page was released where his name was unredacted by the FBI. Oops. And now we found out that he was head of the Religious Affairs Committee in Washington, D.C. And he was a known contact for Arab fundamentalist groups outside the United States. And he was commiserating with known terrorists inside the United States. So basically, this guy was a bad guy. And he's basically in charge of the whole Saudi spy operation protected by the FBI. And what happened was that somewhere along the line, maybe the Saudis got wind of the planes operation, but never gave that information to the CIA. You have to entertain that much, but something that Max Blumenthal doesn't entertain. But you have to
because and to be fair to Max, he's a lot like me and hates the CIA. Like, I mean, it just
who loves the CIA?
It really wants to put as much like evil onto that or
this is a mistake on most right. This is a mistake on most. You have to leave your biases alone.
There is a bias there and a cognitive dissonance that you grab. And I'm just wondering what it is that he read in those documents. I haven't read the documents. I probably won't. I just be honest.
Right.
But I haven't read the documents. I don't know what he's seeing in those documents to make him feel like he's got that knot tied. But
the CIA knew.
He talks as if it's like without a shadow of a doubt.
He could be in a rush to blame the CIA for having foreknowledge, or maybe blaming the CIA for recruiting al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi in the hopes of blaming them for 9/11. But that would be a mistake because, like I said, there is no evidence, direct evidence, to suggest that al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi worked directly for the Saudis and then by default for the CIA. There is none.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, the Saudis could very well have found out somewhere along the line about the planes operation and didn't share with the CIA. That could be possible. Or here's another speculative idea. The CIA did know about the planes operation, but they didn't talk about it publicly because obviously you don't want the CIA to be, they don't want to be blamed for having foreknowledge about a plot that they allowed happen. Because that would be.
And there's that lady that goes around. I just saw her again. You and I have talked about her before. Lindauer.
Oh, Susan Lindauer. Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw her pop up on another podcast here recently. Yeah. So she's still going around talking about how she was in love with an Iraqi and she had all this foreknowledge and worked for the CIA. And I don't know anything about this lady other than reading her book and getting about 2/3 done with it and going, this is a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, I never knew what to make of her, Tommy. I don't know if she's a crackpot or not. And I'm really truthful about that. She's like one of the very, very few people I could say that I don't know where she's coming from.
Reading, if you read her book, if you ever get it, you and I had talked about this before. Yeah. But if you ever get around to like just picking it up, you'll read it and you'll be like, this is bullshit. It doesn't sound real. It's like it's too convenient. And I am very suspect when things come across too convenient. It's like there's not enough complexity to this. This is she's like trying to turn a romance novel into a spy novel, and it didn't sell me. I was just kind of like, I got about 2/3 of the way done with it. I said, this is bullshit. And I put the book down and I stopped reading it. It was like, I'm not reading this. I'm not doing it.
No, right. I don't know what to make of Susan Lindauer. So yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. And so I'd rather not give an opinion about somebody. I just really,
no, my opinion is clearly on her book. It was terrible.
right.
It's like,
Right, but I've heard of her before for years. I don't know who she was, but even like I heard about that she had a mental evaluation and the courts brought it up, and this was basically to defame her and whatnot. But then again, I heard she had a psychotic breakdown. What, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I really don't.
yeah. Yeah, it's a very strange story, and I just want to warn people like listening that if you run across it, like I would take it with a grain of salt. Like I'm very cautious when it comes to something that is so convenient and so conveniently written, and the way it was written, it was kind of like, it's kind of like there's a book out there called Lee and Me. And it's about this chick that swears up and down she had an affair with Lee Harvey Oswald. And he wasn't.
I heard this book. Baker, right? Baker?
Yeah, I think that's her name, Baker. That
Mary
sounds
Baker?
familiar. Yeah. It's not a bad book. I mean, it's interesting, but it's like, I don't know if I believe you. Like, I don't, like, it's just, and the way women like her are writing these books, injecting themselves into these places of history, they're writing them as romance novels. And I'm like, everything sounds like a romance novel up until you like injected yourself into this like major plot of history. It's like,
right.
It's really odd to me. And it's like, all right, fine, maybe.
I don't get it. Like this desperate need to inject yourself.
Well, it's kind of like those women that fall in love with serial killers, through being pen pals.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great analogy.
It's kind of like that. That's what it reminds me of. And what it makes me think of that, because I listen to a lot about serial killers. I read on serial killers. I find that just intriguing and interesting to read up on that stuff. And so when you find out like all these people that are fallen in love with Ted Bundy after he was already arrested, you're like, what is wrong with these women?
Yeah, like, why did they marry?
You already know how this ends.
Right. And especially if it's a woman killer, right? You wonder, like, what makes you special?
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, no, I found it interesting that Max put out this piece and was willing to kind of stand by that sword. And you were the first person I thought of. I was like, oh God, I need to talk to Adam about this. I need to find out what's going on. Because like I said, I didn't read the documents. I'm probably not going to. I'm way too busy for all that.
Oh, right.
To start
very
digging
condensed,
into.
By the way, even though it's 21 pages, it's very condensed.
Yeah. There's so much other stuff I'm doing, and I'm always just scatterbrained. So it's like, it's very hard for me to focus really intently on this subject, but I know that I can always count on you to come in and fill in the gaps for me.
Max overall did an excellent job. I befriended Kit Clarenberg. I'm hoping I'm saying his name right, of Greyzone, who covered the piece. And I gave him a lot of props. I said, thank Kit, I can't thank you enough. Thank you for covering the story of Greyzone. Thank you so much, because this is, Tommy, the biggest revelation that I've ever come across regarding 9/11. It's the biggest, because we now know for sure that the CIA was running an illegal operation inside the United States regarding Al-Midar and Al-Hazmi, and was never shared with either the State Department or the FBI. In fact, it was covered up. And the Saudis were acting in conjunction. So that means this was a joint foreign and domestic intelligence operation that certainly is a huge black eye for the CIA. And it's no surprise legacy media didn't cover this. Of course not, but I was hoping alt media did, because I did a 3-day video series reading the document to the public, because I wanted to make sure that I wanted the public to know what's in these documents.
Send me those links so I can make sure I
sure
put
will.
them in the show notes,
I sure will.
because I want people to get to it, because
Yeah.
I've missed those, and I try to keep up with what you're doing, but
No, I put out a video a day, man.
yeah, life is busy, man. And so
Yeah.
sometimes I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. I'm just trying to survive sometimes. So
If you're doing other things, this would be a lot for so in other words, if people are out there and they just want to read the Canestraro file for like a week or something and really look into it, that's fine. But if you have other things, it's going to take up a good amount of your time.
yeah, it's difficult for me to really like focus in. Like I had done a really good job since 2019 focusing in on ESG and really being focused on ESG. And I've noticed over the last like 3 months, it's been a lot more difficult for me to even pay attention to what's going on with that. And that's kind of my thing. That's what people want to interview me about. And I'm like, yeah, well, I can keep telling you the same thing I've been telling you for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But it gets to be a lot, because I work full time, and then I have, chickens and land, and then the podcast, I'm always doing something. There's always something going on. So it gets to be a little overwhelming sometimes. So,
but overall, Tommy, Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate did an excellent job.
They do good work. Normally.
They do great work.
And so I didn't think they were real far off. Do you think it's possible that these guys worked for Saudi intelligence, and that the CIA was let in on the fact that they worked for Saudi intelligence, and that's why the CIA put in the referral not to act? There no action was needed. That they were informed that, hey, these guys are Saudi intelligence, don't worry about them.
That's an interesting hypothesis. And that's a very plausible scenario, because back in the 1990s, the Saudi intelligence informed the CIA that they were known to Saudi intelligence. Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi were known to Saudi intelligence, and this is the 90s.
Right.
So, I mean, it very well could be that they were, at some level, maybe assets for the GID. And then later on, that's how the Saudis got to be involved with the CIA regarding a joint intelligence operation inside the United States. And that, all preparations were in place about having these guys accepted within the King Fahd Mosque and the members of it that were working on behalf of Saudi intelligence.
Well, and who better for Al-Qaeda to recruit than the intelligence assets that the CIA trusts? And they already knew that MI5 and MI6 weren't going to go along with it. The Australian intelligence wasn't going to go along with it. Mossad, who are they left with? Canada or Saudi Arabia? And, it's like, who's more likely to go along with your plot? You can find these Islamic kind of extremist. I don't like the word extremist, but this is kind of like the mindset of the Islamic extremist within Saudi Arabia. You're not going to find that in these Western intelligence organizations. Right. So you might as well be digging your needle into the Middle Eastern organizations, these intelligence organizations. And what better cover could you have if you are an intelligence operative for an ally of the United States coming into the United States, carrying out an operation, and the United States isn't going to freaking bother to investigate.
Yes. And also at the same time, we have to employ another, air of thought, is that they very well could be Saudi agents, but they don't know the specifics of what they were doing inside the United States. We're all just assuming that we knew. but that's just speculation because the only thing missing from the story are specifics. In other words, time and date of the attacks, what method of the attacks, and what's being attacked.
Right.
That's what we're talking about in specifics. If we had that, 9/11 is solved. Right. So,
hindsight makes that so difficult because we already know the ending of the story.
Right. Exactly. We're
And
playing.
so we're putting together what we already know
right
with these actions, and,
right.
and we're coming up with this narrative.
Right. And these are not irrational speculations, by the way. These are very plausible scenarios. We just don't have the connecting evidence for it.
Right. Right.
And I think that's the only thing missing now. But I mean, look how far. I mean, it's 23 years now, and people are thinking that 9/11's over with. Well, look, information's coming out. I mean, it's 2023.
We still don't have all of the information on the JFK assassination.
Right. God,
calm your jets, people. There's a long way to go.
Yes, there is. All we need now is patience, and the only thing is time, right? Because everybody wants to hold either some aspects of the government responsible for 9/11 for either allowing it to happen or even making it happen, and that's a dare claim. But we just desperately want to hold somebody accountable, and because of these sham trials and Guantanamo demons start. We don't have justice. And so we just are so in a rush to blame somebody. I'm just saying, don't fall for that. Patience is needed here. And maybe, someday in the near future, we'll have that piece of information about specifics and that we could hold somebody accountable. But we don't need that because now we have the Canestraro file, which basically answers some of the questions about now we can make that connection. Hey, look, why did they withhold that information? Now we could blame Tennant, we could blame Cofer Black for at least that much of withholding evidence.
Right.
But if nobody really starts talking about it on a bigger national level, everyone's going to forget about it. And already, Greyzone is talking about it. Russia Today's talking about it, but that's basically about it.
We need to get you in front of Tucker Carlson when he decides what he's going to do now that he's been fired.
Hey, I can't do it. Even it's a big platform.
He's the only good voice on the right, man.
I can't do it only because here's a guy who's a China war hawk, and I can't do it. And he basically made fun of truthers at one point.
Yeah, but he's done a lot of repenting of his Iraq talk. I think it would be a conversation he'd be willing to have.
I think he's a fraud.
I don't think he's a fraud.
Yeah,
I think we all grow and we all learn, and we have to look at him as a human being. That's how I look at it.
Look, you're the optimist. I'm the pessimist. So there's a happy
I'm quite pessimistic about plenty of things.
We're both seeing the glass half full.
Don Lemon's always going to be a douchebag. Like I'm quite pessimistic.
He's in the same category. They're all in the same category. Look, I would rather speak to say Abby Martin, for example, or I'd rather speak to.
See, I'd rather get you in front of a Tucker Carlson or a Joe Rogan or somebody with a bigger audience, because I don't think Abby Martin or even myself, we don't do justice to the message you have to put out there, because you've done so much research, so much work, and it's such a bigger subject than I can cover with my 8,000 downloads per episode. You know what I'm saying? It's like 4.2 million people seeing you speak means a lot more than the 8,000 people that watch me,
Well, you know what? I'd rather have quality than quantity.
Yeah, that's fair.
That is more important to me than anything.
But like I've seen some of my friends go on Tucker, like Charles Haywood and some of these guys, and he's always treated them fairly. He's never given them a hard time. And so I think it would be a worthwhile pursuit to try to get you in front of him at some point.
Well, only if we can basically get something done in the public sphere where we could pressure the federal government to basically investigate the matter properly. That's what I'm more concerned with.
Well, right. I know that's what you're concerned about, but I don't think you'll ever get to that position until enough people have heard this story.
Fair enough. I think that's a fair assessment. That's a fair assessment.
But we
I'm
gotta
just worried about reputation. That's all.
no, man. I got your back, dude. I'll fight anybody.
Back to back, that's great. I got Tommy on my side.
But we gotta okay. So I think unless you have something else to add to this particular subject, I think we're good on this one.
Yeah, we're good. I mean, all I could basically add at this point is that the Canestraro document basically alleviates a lot of questions about what we suspected in the last 15, 20 years, that it was a covert joint intelligence operation involving a foreign entity, a domestic entity, in regards to an intelligence operation of trying, in the hopes of trying to persuade 2 known Al-Qaeda operatives to become future informants against Al-Qaeda. That's what the Canestraro document basically entails.
Right. All right. So plug away, and we're gonna have to plan a part 11 now. Like,
yeah,
it took us a couple of months to get to a part 10, but something popped up, and I was like, I kept thinking about it. I was like, man, I need to text Adam and figure out where we're gonna go next. So
you know what it is? This is like, it's like true crime. There's always got to be a crime somewhere down the road. So in other words, in
never
time,
ending.
yeah, it's never, 9/11 is never ending. I mean, we think about all the millions of documents that we still have access to.
Yeah.
So Google my name. I'm Adam Fitzgerald. If you Google Adam Fitzgerald 9/11, I come right up. But if you go to my Twitter account _Adam Fitzgerald, I have on my pinned tweet all the links to my Medium articles, my WordPress, where now it's up to 4,000, I think 800 documents and files. I'm uploading books on there. Go look at it at your leisure for free. And also my Dark and Hour podcast. We're up to 82 episodes there. And my YouTube channel, which is the largest catalog of 9/11 videos, I think, in the world. It's over 3,800 videos uploaded now. So it's all pinned tweet right there at your disposal. So
Adam, you're a monster, man. Everybody tells me they're like, man, your 9/11 series is so good. I was like, man, that guy.
Oh, I'm glad.
I was like, Adam is so good, man. So I'm
not smart. I just have more time to read.
Hey, man, but you found a way to focus in on one thing, and I've never found a way to focus in only on one thing. I'm always all over the place, and you have zoned in and keyed in on the subject that you love, and you do some really good work, man. And I can't wait to see what you got coming up next.
I appreciate those sentiments, Tommy. Thank you very much. Really.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to stop the recording now.